Hey everybody, Ryan here at etrailer. Today on our 2022 Ford Escape, we're going to be showing you how to install the Blue Ox diode wiring kit. But before we get into that, why don't we take a minute, check this out, and make sure it's going to work for you. Before we jump right in and start talking about the diodes, why don't we go ahead and just kind of take a minute, refresh ourselves, and go over the main parts that we're going to need to flat tow our Escape in the first place. There's going to be a total of 5 main components that you're going to need. First one will be the base plate, and that's going to provide us with a solid and reliable attachment point. That way we can hook our tow bar up to it. So tow bar is going to be the second component, and this is going to be the physical link that actually connects the front of your vehicle to the back of your motorhome. Third main component will be your safety cables, and these are there in the event of an unlikely disconnect. They're going to keep everything paired together. The fourth main component will be tow bar wiring, and what this is going to do is transfer the lighting functions from the back of your coach to the back of your SUV, keeping you safe and legal. And last but not least, the fifth main component will be a supplemental braking system. And what this is going to do is apply the brakes in your towed vehicle whenever you hit the brakes in your coach, helping to bring you to a more predictable and complete stop. With that out of the way, here's a perfect example on how the diodes are going to work though. So in our motorhome, we got our left turn signal going. That's transferred back here, so people around us are going to know what's going on. When it comes to tow bar wiring, diodes are usually what I recommend almost every single time, and this is no exception. Once they're installed, it makes the setup super easy. Essentially, all you have to do is plug them in up at the front of your vehicle, and that's it. You're not even going to know they're there. Compared to some of the other wirings, like magnetic wiring, for example, that's something you got to set up every single time. You know, the magnetic lights stick to your roof, and honestly, I'm not sure. This might even be aluminum. A lot of these newer cars are aluminum, so they won't even work anyway. And then you got to store them, you know, when you're done. So we all know how storage is when you're over the road, and the more space you got, the better. I do like this kit. There's a Roadmaster kit as well that I've done several times. Nothing wrong with it at all. Putting the Blue Ox setup on this one though seems to work out a little bit better because the diodes are a little bit smaller. And that really goes a long way on a vehicle like the Escape, because you hardly have any space at all to get these diodes behind the light and actually get the light put back in. So any size that we can save, I guess you could say, is worth it to me. So with this setup, it's just a little bit easier to get everything to fit behind your tail light. I talked about how easy this is to hook up whenever you're ready to flat tow, and literally you're just going to have to take your cable here, plug it into the front of your Escape and into the back of your motorhome. Now, it is worth mentioning this kit isn't going to come included with the 6-way round connector or this cable, so that's something you will have to get separately if you don't already have them, but Blue Ox does offer them, and that's what we're using here today. But other than that, you know, when it comes down to it, this is a good fit for the Escape. But if you'd like to see how that's done, feel free to hang around. We'll go ahead and hook it up together now. To begin our installation, we're going to be here at the front of our Escape, and obviously we have the front fascia off, and that's because I'm doing this the same time that we're doing our base plate. So it makes it a lot easier to get to everything and whatnot, but this can be done with the fascia on. Obviously, you'll just have to work around that. But first thing you want to do is take one end of your wiring, and I just got it running up here through the bracket on our base plate, or where you're going to decide to mount up your connector, and do anything else that you plan on running as well. So for example, our vehicle's getting a charge line, which is this red wire, so I'm going to hook this up at the same time too, just so we can do it all at once. So think that through when you're going to do this. But you're going to take the rubber boot, put it through the wire, and like I said, this is a charge line. It's not included with the diode kit, so just kind of ignore this, but I'm going to do it at the same time. So from there, we can take the end of our wiring separate it, so just kind of carefully cut in between the wires. Peel them back, about like that, you know, 3-4 inches, something along those lines. And then we're just going to strip the insulation back decent ways, maybe about 1/4 inch or so. Something about like that. Give the wire a good twist. I'm going to repeat that for our remaining wires, and then we can get them hooked up. With all these stripped back, now if you take your connector plug, these are going to be labeled. You know, not really that impressed how they labeled them, just because they put the labels right underneath the head of the screw. But what you're going to do is back the screw out, and then this one will be labeled LT for left turn, so the yellow wire will go to it. This one is labeled GD for ground, the white wire. This one is TM for taillight, so the brown wire. And then this one right here, that's right turn, so RT. And then if you're hooking up your charge line, if you got one of those, that'll go in the center one. So from there, we'll take the appropriate wire. So we'll start with our tail light, push that down into the terminal, and tighten down the set screw. And we'll just continue to work our way around. Until we get them all hooked up. There's what all the wires are going to look like once you have them hooked up. And then you can put the rubber boot over it. I do suggest at the very end, once you verify everything works, you know, you can tape this up and put sealer inside of here and just help prevent any corrosion. But I wait to the very end to do that. That way, if you do have an issue, I'm not trying to undo all that stuff. So for now, I'll just set it up like this and then take some hardware and secure this to our bracket. So I started to route our wiring towards the back of our vehicle. In our case, the braking system that we're going to put in does not tie into our wiring, so I just ran it along the bottom. If your braking system does, for example, the InvisiBrake by Roadmaster or the Stank Play Duo, among others, it might not be a bad idea to run this wire up into the engine compartment and then down the firewall. That way you can hook it up a little easier, but this will work too. Regardless, so it comes around through here, and I just have it zip tied to our subframe. Be sure to do your best to avoid any hot or moving parts, obviously, or anything real sharp. Ran it along through here, and then I started to kind of break it off over to the would this be the driver's side of our vehicle, and underneath this panel. So this is held in place. There's a few 10mm head screws or nuts along the bottom. You can pop down, and I just followed these factory lines here, and it kind of shoots along through there, just on this side. And at this point it goes up and over our rear subframe. So pay attention to this area too, because there's a lot of moving stuff going on right here. So get this up as high as you can. All right, through there. And this is where it drops down. At some point, actually at this point, we need to ground our white wire. So figure out a way to secure it to the frame, and then eventually start to run our other wires over to the passenger side. So I'm going to come up with a plan here, and we'll get back to that and get that done. So our white wire, where we're going to ground that, there's a stud right here. That'll work perfect. Granted, you'll have to use your own nut, but you can also use a self-tapping screw, thread it in, or you could even, I'm sure you could use this exhaust bolt here too. That would also provide a ground, but use this one. I'm going to take a ring terminal, I strip back the insulation. We will crimp this down. Put that on, and I scraped some of the paint off there too to help give us a good connection. And I'll just tighten this down. So that should provide us with the ground that we need. And then our yellow and brown wire just stayed over here on the driver's side. And I took the extra brown wire that comes with it and just tape that to it, because this is going to run up and act as like a jumper wire. So that extra brown wire and the green wire then runs over to the passenger side. So it just runs along through there, where it drops down here. And for now, we'll let our wiring hang right here. We can go up top, get access to our tail lights, and get everything hooked up. To get the tail light out, you're going to open up your hatch, and then you're going to have this little plastic piece here. You just kind of pop that out, small screwdriver. There's a fastener. You can use a flathead or a Torx bit, it looks like, whichever one you got. I got this flathead laying here, so I'm just going to use it. Then you can grab the light and kind of start to loosen it, working it back and forth and kind of pulling towards you, and trying to get this to release here. And what's holding it is some alignment pins, which look like that. So these actually come in from the side, so when you're maneuvering it around, once it starts to get loose, you can pull it out this way. With that said, we don't have just regular bulbs in here, so we can't just undo these and actually set our light to the side. So it's going to have to hang here. So now I'm going to do is just set this down. I'm going to grab some tape and maybe some type of padding, put it here, that way our light don't get damaged or damage the paint. So I got some tape and stuff around here to keep everything protected. And I tested the factory wires to figure out the functions of them. And we're looking for the tail light and our stop and turn signal. So the factory yellow wire here, that's going to be our taillight signal. And this factory purple wire, that's what we're going to be using for our stop and turn. So I'm going to cut them about in half. Then I'm going to strip all four ends of the insulation. I'm going to kind of undo these here, give us some more room to work with. So on each one of these ends, I'm going to strip it back about like that to expose the bare wire. Give that wire a twist, and then take a spade terminal, slide that over the bare end of the wire, and crimp it down. I'm going to do that same thing for the 3 remaining ends. So here's what all the ends look like. And at this point we can take 2 of our diodes, and the side of the diode that has the single post coming out, you're going to plug that into the wire closest to our tail light. And we'll just go color for color. So obviously yellow to yellow there, and purple to purple. And now what we can do is get our wires that we routed to the back actually up into the tail light pocket. That way we can get them connected to the diodes. To get our wires actually pulled up into the tail light pocket, I just took a pull wire here, dropped it down from the top, taped it. I'm using a piece of tube. You can use a coat hanger, whatever you got. But pull these up into position. So we're not going to need all of this extra length here, so I'm going to cut some of it down. So that should be good. And what we're going to do is strip back the insulation on all the ends. For the yellow one, or the yellow wire, we'll put on this terminal. And for the brown wires, I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to strip both ends back. And then twist these together. And I'm going to use a yellow terminal. So this one doesn't come with it. These would probably fit in a blue one, doing it this way, if you got them really tight. Or if you don't want to do it that way, you can just pick one of the brown wires, put on a regular terminal on one end of the wire, and then down a little bit ways, you could cut it and use one of the butt connectors they give you to tie both of them in there, if that makes sense. But, you know, this is one less connection point here that we don't have to worry about, so that's why I like to do it this way. All right, we'll take that terminal, put it on, crimp it down, and now we're ready to hook these up to our diodes. So with the factory yellow wire being our taillight circuit, you're going to take the new brown wire and put it onto that diode. And then with the purple being our stop and turn, you're going to take the new yellow wire and put it on that diode. Now what we're able to do is put our taillight back in place the opposite way that we removed it. Not a ton of space in here, so you will have to kind of finesse this back in. Make sure your wires aren't going to be getting hung up or anything like that. So just take your time, and eventually we'll get this to pop in place and not have to worry about damaging anything. Over here on the passenger side, essentially we did everything the exact same way as the other side. Really the only difference being the color of new wires that we ran. But the factory wires, you know, share the same functions and colors as the driver's side. So our factory yellow is a tail light, factory purple, that'll be for our stop and turn. And so the new brown wire will go to the factory yellow, and the new green wire will go to the factory purple. So hook them up the same way. And again, with this one, we'll go ahead and get our light put back in place. Now it's a good idea to test our wiring to make sure that it's working properly. So I just plugged into a test box which simulates a motorhome. You can use your motorhome, but keep in mind if you have any issues on the vehicle side here, it might be related to what your motorhome's doing. So something to think about. But we'll go ahead and turn on our taillights. We'll hit our left turn signal, our right turn signal, and our brake lights. And that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the Blue Ox diode wiring kit on our 2022 Ford Escape.